Undoubtedly, there is an outside world. The world is real. We just don't see it that way. We are unable to see things exactly as they are. In fact, refusing to accept reality can be beneficial. And the reason is because we can only directly interact with the physical world via our senses. We can never be certain that our impressions of the world are accurate since our senses combine different elements of it. It's not so much a question of whether we perceive reality accurately as it is whether we perceive reality as it actually is. We don't, is the response. Even though it seems odd, if we consider what is visible to be only what the eyes project, we see far more than what is apparent. Here's an illustration. Imagine entering a room with graffiti on the wall that you find very repulsive. When you look at it, you flush, your heart starts to beat quickly, and you're shocked and enraged. Of course, if you didn't understand the words used to write it, you might have experienced the exact same retinal events and early visual system events without a corresponding reaction. Beyond merely what is sent into our neurological system, much more manifests for us. The flavors, scents, and colors we perceive are likewise created by our senses. They don't belong to an objective reality as properties. They're actually manufacturing characteristics of our senses. By objective reality, we mean what the majority of physicists would mean, i.e., that something would still exist even if there were no living things to observe it. In the sense of objective reality, colors, smells, tastes, and other sensations are not real. In another way, they are real. They are genuine encounters. Even though it is only a perception, your headache is a genuine feeling. It therefore exists differently from the objective reality that physicists discuss. We frequently think that our senses are providing accurate information. The realization that our senses may create things that are not objectively real, like tastes, scents, and colors, came as quite a shocking shock to me. Everything contained in space-time as well as space-time itself. All of the physical characteristics of objects, such as their shapes, masses, and velocities, as well as electrons, quarks, the sun, and the moon, are also constructs. When someone opens their eyes and looks around, it can be incredibly challenging for them to grasp that the data their brain is getting is useless. I can see everything, I guess. What do you mean it has no purpose? What you perceive is a middle hue rather than a chord where the distinctive identities may be seen. You'll actually notice something that appears to be yellow. It's as though when you play the notes C and G together in music, you merely hear the intermediate note, E, rather than a chord. Therefore, even at this most fundamental level, we don't accurately portray the information we're receiving. And the reason is that adopting this perspective was beneficial. So what do you perceive? Not the data but the utility of the data. We have been molded by natural selection and evolution to have perceptions that will keep us alive. So please don't pick up a snake if you see one. Don't leap off a cliff if I see one. We must consider our observations carefully, but it does not give us the right to interpret them literally. If I see a train, I must not cross in front of it. Perception itself. A perspective on something that is determined by perception is by its very nature a simplification of the information contained in a thing. My interpretation of it will contain far less information overall than the real event does. I can see the thing through a microscope or a telescope to gather information from many angles, including the east, west, top, north, and interior. None of them will provide me with all the details concerning the circumstance. There isn't one all-encompassing viewpoint that can provide me with all the details about practically any circumstance, then. This implies that reality itself is multifaceted. It cannot be photographed from any angle. Consequently, different viewpoints must be used. All of which will have some signal or component of reality. Also possible is distortion. It's possible that I'm distortedly viewing the object through a colored or fisheye lens. Why is this important? The key to successfully navigating reality is having the capacity to hold the relationships between many perspectives in a way that can guide our decision-making. This requires being able to take multiple perspectives, see the partial truth in them, and then be able to seam them together into something that isn't a perspective but a trans-perspective. How do we assert that what we say is true? And how might we tell whether what we believe to be true is indeed true? The scientific method has its origins here. Let's start with observation, ask a question, identify the hypothesis that would provide an answer, and then determine how we would start to address the hypothesis. Tell that to a doctor or a space scientist. Science clearly works, in contrast to the belief that there is no such thing as objective truth. The theory becomes your instructor once you put it in writing. It somehow learns to be smarter than you. General relativity equations were created by Albert Einstein, who was unaware that they implied the existence of black holes. The equations were more intelligent than Einstein in that regard. For many years, Einstein rejected the existence of black holes. The mathematics made it quite evident that they might be real. Einstein disagreed. It turned out that the equations were correct and Einstein was mistaken. It's therefore really intriguing. We employ these theories because they allow us to get knowledge. When attempting to address the nature of things, you could discover that posing certain queries necessitates processing the underlying reality in various ways. For instance, comprehending the human mind takes a certain type of processing when done physically. And there's every reason to believe that our existing fundamental physical principles are sufficient for that kind of handling. However, comprehending how a person functions, how their thoughts, feelings, and other behaviors combine to produce their personality and make them become human actors, will call for very different understandings of and approaches to processing the underlying information structure. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more.